And welcome to the Stateside Soccer Show. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me, as always, is the man who decided not to get drenched the other day, Logan Stump.
Decided? I'm so confused.
Yeah, you had your season tickets for the San Jose game in Orlando, and you decided to turn those in.
Yeah. No, I'm a new weatherman. I've predicted things. We're supposed to go to Magic Kingdom tonight because the cast members have our preview, and my wife works at Disney, and we're supposed to go, and it's currently raining. So I'm pretty sure that our co-host for
Fireworks
stoppage
are not
time.
happening.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure our co-host for stoppage time has indefinitely screwed us because it seems like it's going to rain for the next eternity because Matt said it always rains. And he's not wrong.
Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead and start. We're going to talk MLS. While we do so, just tell us, Logan, just tell us a quick story about your last. When was the last time you went to a game? Was it?
I was going to say the last time I went would have been. Oh God, that's a crazy question. Orlando and Toronto would have been the last match that I saw in Orlando here. So I don't know. Like I took my wife to that game, and she was fascinated with the game and the overall like performance and the show and everything that else goes with it. Not to mention that they have White Claw there, so all of my White Claw fans that are working on specific things, especially drinking White Claw and enjoying White Claw, I think it is definitely something to do. But yeah, my wife went there, and she basically what she did was she sat there, and as the game started getting going, she was picking out players that really just kind of that she liked watching play. I don't know whether it was because of their good looks or whether it was just because she liked how much of an athlete they were. She did make comments about that often, about how athletic these guys were compared to basketball, baseball players, where they weren't built like brick houses, but they were built in ways that they're running around the pitch for 90 minutes plus. So it was definitely something that was exciting for her. But just kind of going back to that game, we got a game coming up this coming weekend, July 4th weekend, which is July 3rd. And what she's going to do is so with my season ticket pass, what I can do is I can not use one of my season tickets for one of the matches. Say I can't go to a match, I can use that money and that credit for another pass or a ticket. And so what I did was I just exchanged my ticket in for credit, and I got my wife a second ticket so that she can go again. So July 3rd, we're hoping that there may be some fireworks downtown that we can see from the stadium or something like that. But she gets to go July 3rd on the credit. I had to pay 24 cents for her ticket, which was fantastic. But I can't wait to take her again. But it seems like it's been such a long time. It's been over a month since I've been to a game. So I think that's been something that I've been looking forward to getting back to this weekend.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our headlines. This is weird being on the right-hand side of the screen. Okay. Let's see here. Did you want to start, or did you want me to start?
I can start.
Sure, go ahead.
The first one that I was going to go through was the Minnesota United run, the run that the Loons are making. We started out the season, both Jordan and I, you had them. It was like second and third or something like that.
I can show you.
Yeah, there you go. You can show us. So
we
Jordan,
both had them third, but I had MLS Cup winner.
Yeah, and I was predicting them as a dark horse to make a run in the playoffs, a really deep run. And then it started off the season with quite the opposite happening for what our prediction said. So they lost 4 straight, and then since then they've won 4 and drawn 2. So they haven't lost since early in May. May 8th was the last time they lost.
The 5th place in the West right now. Yeah,
and I think a lot of it has to do with just adding guys like Abila and adding Fragapane. I don't know how to say his name, but adding those 2 attacking players, a midfielder, and somebody on the in a forward position that is threatening a goal scoring. I think it adds a lot of dynamic attacking play to the Loons. Adrian Heath, maybe they did this to benefit him because he's always done more as an underdog, I guess. And so maybe they lost 4 straight on purpose. And then now they're putting a stretch of games here together that they could be proud of. But I mean, they've beaten pretty good teams, not fantastic teams. So that's kind of where, like, yes, they're on a run, but it's also not against teams that I don't, these teams aren't ones that are in form. So they've beaten Vancouver, Dallas twice, beat Dallas once, drew with them. They beat Austin, but everybody's beating Austin these days. And they beat a Portland team that I don't think is up to the caliber that a Portland team usually is. But I'm just impressed with a lot of what Minnesota have done, because it kind of, I think when you and I were talking before, they were down in the cellar. I mean, they were down in the 12th or 13th position, trying to gain their way back up, and now they're all the way up into 5th and only have 10 games played.
I just had to check to see if I was muted or not. Vancouver is 8 points, their last place. Minnesota is in 5th with 14. So there is a 6-point gap.
Right.
So it only took that quick turnaround for Minnesota to go from like bottom to 5th place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, like, I know we're going to talk about a certain team on your next headline that you might be starting to hit the panic button. I'm not, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Just because of how, like, from 4th to 13th place in the West, it is an 8-point gap. So anybody's game on the West right now. But Minnesota, yeah, certainly turning it around. Up to 5th place. Now, when we look at them, they lost at 4 straight, right, at the beginning of the season. Like you said, they have 4 wins, 2 draws. After that, their home record's starting to look a little bit more respectable with the 3 wins to 2 losses. The away record's still not so great. 1 win, 2 losses, 2 draws, but certainly improving. Their goal differential still at a -2. So they still haven't really been scoring all that much. But their defense is actually pretty decent after how bad they started off the season, right? Like, they're at a 12 goals against. When we look at teams like Kansas City and LA Galaxy, who have 15 against, Houston has 16 against, Portland has 15 against. Like, Seattle has 7, Colorado has 11. That's the other teams in the top 7 right now. So pretty good for Minnesota to turn it around. I do think it helps when you have the 2 new signings, right? To be able to help. And I think I don't think they were as bad as they were at the beginning of the season. It's almost like when you're never as bad as your worst game and never as good as your best game type of thing.
Right.
Now, it is a little funny that Fragapane is now already tied with Leeds in goals, and same with Huno. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's how you say it.
And they're both, 2 of their brand new signings. They're both up there with 2 goals. Reynoso only has the 1 still in 9 games. And you have Fragapane and Huno up there with only 3 and 4 appearances. Already that high. So pretty crazy. But like when we look at their schedule, right? Like when we looked at Minnesota's schedule and we look at the beginning of the season, they had a rough schedule anyway, right?
Yeah.
They started with Seattle, lost 4-0. They lost to Salt Lake 2-1. Salt Lake was in the top 7. They just fell out of it. So we still don't really know how that is. They lost to Austin. They lost to the Rapids, who's actually pretty good right now. Then they started winning. And these wins are 1-0 over Vancouver, 1-0 over Dallas, 1-1 draw with Salt Lake, 1-1 draw with Dallas, 2-0 win over Austin, 1-0 win over Portland. So they've definitely shored up their defense. I mean, in that span since May 12th, they've given up 2 goals, 1 to Salt Lake, 1 to Dallas. With the position Dallas is in right now, you would have hoped if you're a Minnesota fan, you probably win that game, but I think it was an away game as well. So it was an away game. So I guess a point on the road's not so bad. But I just think that they'll be they'll be better, right? I think that they'll continue to be better. They got San Jose next, which, goodness, should be a gimme at this point. We'll talk about their issues because they just made some front office moves. But then they have the Rapids again. Then they have Seattle again. Then they have Portland again. Then they have LAFC. They have Vancouver on July 31st. So that's maybe a reprieve for them. But I don't know. So, I mean, look, the West teams are just going to continue to have to beat up on each other just because there's so many good teams over there. And it's at this point where when you look at the standings, you have 3 clear front runners for the West: Seattle, KC, and LA Galaxy, and then everybody else, I feel like. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I don't see anybody below that right now that are catching my eye going, okay, we're going to compete with these 3 teams down at the end. And Seattle's kind of coming off their really hot start. I mean, not tremendously, but they're starting to drop back down towards the bunch. So I think that you're
still
right.
Undefeated.
Those top 3 are really just the ones that are going to be the most competitive.
All right, anything else about Minnesota before we move on to my topic?
Anu was a recent signing as well. He's played 4 matches and has put out that number of goals. Avila probably has been the less impressive of the 3, I think.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
3 signings that they've made, the 2 most recent that we talked about.
Yeah, he was somebody that looked good against Seattle to start. Like he almost could have scored right away. And then
hadn't done anything since
then, it doesn't seem like there's been much going on there. So we're going to move on to the best team in the East right now, Revolution. They lost. Panic buttons. They got their 2nd loss of the season. They're still top. They're 23 points out of 11 games. So they're actually under the points per game that Orlando has, which is Orlando's at 2.1. New England's at 2.09 right now because Orlando's only played 21 and they're 2 points back. So a good moment for Orlando to be able to maybe capitalize on some of this now that they have DK back. They are getting Pato back soon. So the Revs went on this incredible streak during, when was their last loss? Everything's loading very slow for
May 8th against Nashville.
May 8th against Nashville. That was their first loss of the season. It's a good team, too. So here's their results since then. A draw with the Union, 1-1 on the 12th of May. A 1-0 win over Columbus. A 3-1 win over New York. A 1-0 win over Cincy. A 3-2 win over NYCFC. A 3-2 win over New York Red Bulls. They love those 3-2s over the New York teams. And then they lose to Dallas, the worst team in the West, if I'm still correct. No, they jumped up over Austin now. Yeah. So that changed. Man, everything's changed. That's how quick the West changes because of that small gap there. They actually Dallas leapfrog 2 teams there with that win. So that is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They went 6 games without a loss. Pretty good when you've only played 11, right? At that point, it was like you're losing 1 almost every 6 games, which you would take that, right? Because there's 34 games divided by 6. That doesn't work out evenly, though, does it? So you have like 5. You're going to have about 6 losses in the season. Then if you had that, not going to happen, I don't think. But at the pace that they were at, that's what they were kind of looking for. A cool stat about the Revs with this loss is actually it makes their away form really nice. Okay, their away form is now 2-2-2. Before that, it would have been 2-1-2. So now that's even. Their home form though is still just 5-0-0. So they've been perfect at home, which not even Seattle has done. They've had 3 draws at home. Kansas City has had 5 wins and 2 draws at home as well. So just something to point out there that the Revs have slipped up. is it time for Orlando to capitalize? If we look at the schedule, Revolution have Columbus. That's going to be a tough one. Columbus is starting to kind of get a little bit more of a feel to it. That's on July 3rd. That's on ESPN. We'll cover that at the end of the show as well. And when we look at Orlando is scheduled for, I should know this,
July 3rd against the Red Bull.
Against Red Bull. Oh, that's right, because my sister's going to that game.
Yep.
Man, so when we look at standings, Red Bull is below Columbus. So you would say Orlando should have the better shot there, right? But the way MLS works with these games, these teams are never even, it seems like, with games played. So even if you win that one and then Revs win that one, then they're still ahead of you. But, you have to think that if you're Orlando, right, you're getting healthy, Revs slipped up, perfect time to grab some points, right? And you're at home.
Yeah, and especially with Galisi missing, with Sebastian Mendez out, with Pato still hurt, with DK just coming back into form. Chris Mueller hasn't been great. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues and Orlando hadn't defended as well in the last couple of matches. So just trying to get back into that at home and against a team that I think they can get some revenge on, because Red Bulls beat us before we head into that break. So, yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for Orlando to jump up into that spot, and especially without Pedro, because I think that's the biggest loss, is just not having Pedro around because of the Copa Americas. So.
And when we look at it, this is actually going to be Columbus's against the Revs. This is going to be the opening of their new beautiful new Crew Stadium. I'm not calling it lower.com field or whatever. No,
but they pay the bills, Jordan.
I don't care.
They don't pay my bills.
Find somebody that doesn't have a .com in the name for the stadium, please.
I think it's like lowerrate.com field or something like that too.
Yeah, it's almost as bad as the Chicago White Sox with guaranteed rate.
Guaranteed rate. That's what it is. Yeah.
Actually, that's better than a .com, lower.com or whatever. But if you'd like to sponsor us, Lower, maybe I can change my mind.
I was gonna say, start paying our bills and we'll have it.
We'll shill it. We'll be like, oh, that's the best stadium in MLS. But yeah, so that's going to mean a lot to Columbus, right? So I think that maybe Columbus goes out there. Revs could lose another one. Revs form away from home is the 2-2-2, right? It's not a home game for the Revs. So, and it's a home game for Orlando against the Red Bulls. I think it's lining up that Orlando could even maybe get the first place this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, the Revs look good, though. I mean, Gustavo Bose finally looked really good. 9 matches, 5 goals, 2 assists. Buxa, who we had some questions about, he's got 4 goals. And Carles Gil's on like a warpath to set that MLS record of assists per season and in season with 7 assists already. And he's only played in those 11 matches. Every time he touches the ball, again, we talked about how goal dangerous he is and how many chances he creates on goal.
Yeah, he and Nani, I feel like should be really good picks for MVP at this point.
Yeah.
Or somebody on Seattle, like Raul Ruiz-Diaz, I guess.
Yeah, or Christian Roldan.
Yeah, it depends on how Seattle does. If Seattle finishes undefeated, then we'd have our own Invincibles here in America, and that would be somebody from there would have to get it.
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah. I mean, that would be insane. That would never – it's not going to happen. But if we keep saying it's not going to happen, if we keep saying it's not going to happen, it's going to happen. So I'm going to keep saying that. I would like to see it because I just think that would be fun. They'd lose in the playoffs for sure, I think. But I think if they won Supporter Shield with no losses, that would be pretty cool.
All Logan has to do is say that, man, Seattle doesn't look like they're ever going to lose in a text message, and Seattle will lose.
Oh, boy. Okay, let's go to your second one here. LAFC struggles.
Yeah, so
what's your thought on them?
So like you said, the West is really difficult because I was trying to pick a lot of the Western because you picked some of the Eastern guys.
Yeah, I picked a lot of the East. Yeah.
You picked 3 of the East, so I picked 3 of the West. Well, no, 2 West and then 1
I was
East.
going to say,
Yeah, I forgot Armas was the next one. Spoiler alert. But no, and the reason why I want to talk about LAFC is because I think when you're looking at a team that many expected to be back to the form that we saw them in years past, especially with Vela. And then Vela completely healthy for this season. I think you saw a lot of people say that LAFC was easily 1 or 2 in the West and should run away with the West, with a couple other teams in mind maybe. But I think there was a lot of hype with LAFC, but because of the way that injuries have worked out, Diego Rossi's been hurt at times, and has not played all the games that you would normally see him play. And he's not up onto the production level as he was last year, just because I think there's just so much more going on. They've got Corey Baird that they're trying to mix in at a number 9. And he's been, dinged up a couple times. And if you look at all their matches played, like none of them have really played. I think the only ones that have played all their matches is Cifuentes, Atuesta, Murillo, and then Segura, I think, are the guys that have played 10 matches. And, I think when you look at a team that is supposed to be fighting for titles, you would like to see that list be a little longer. But because of all these guys haven't been in form, they haven't been fit, they've been out because of different reasons. Carlos Vela especially being of concern. It's just a team that really struggled to kind of find a groove, whether that be rust, whether that be fitness, whether that be just trying to get guys back in. And maybe they find it here and then they could take off like a rocket, because I think that's the kind of team they have. But when you're looking at teams like this is one of those ones you got to be concerned. I think they're 9th in the West. But again, that's not saying a lot when the teams are, what'd you say, 25 and
So right now, LAFC is 9th with 12 points. Mm-hmm. They're 1 point away from 7th place, and they're 4 points away from 4th place. So I think I will say I'm not as concerned about you because, like you said, the injuries. Now, of course, you could do the counter argument that Orlando had seen through all of this stuff with injuries and players on Copa and all this stuff. But when I look at their schedule, I didn't realize this, even though we talk about this every week. This schedule was pretty brutal for LAFC to start off. So they had Austin. They won that one, no problem, 2-0, right? They draw with Seattle. That looks like a pretty good result now. Okay? They draw with Houston. That one you can kind of be like, really? But Houston's in the top 6 right now. So
they played well, too.
Maybe you cut them some slack, right? Yeah. Then they lose to LA Galaxy. Really, El Tráficos are coin toss, but also a coin toss, not a
toin toss.
Tomato, potato, right?
Oh, man.
But LA Galaxy have been like one of the best teams in the West right now, so you can't even fault them for that. Then they lose to Seattle at Seattle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they beat Colorado, who's been a good team. They lose to NYCFC, who have been
up and down.
Yeah. Top 4 in the East, though. And then they lose to they draw with Houston again, okay? Then they beat Dallas, a team they have to beat, and then they lose to another good team in the West in Kansas City. So it's like I don't even know. The one thing I'd be concerned about maybe is their away form. No wins, 3 losses, 1 draw. But their home form is 3 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws. That's okay. I mean, it's not as good as some of these other teams. But when you look at when I'm looking at these home records outside of the top 3 of the West. So Seattle's 4-0-3, Kansas City's 5-0-2, LA's 4-1-0. Then you have Colorado being 3-1-0, Minnesota's 3-2-0, Houston's 3-0-2, Portland's 3-2-0. LAFC falls right in line with that 3-1-2. So like it's not even like to me. I think that they'll be okay. And the thing is with MLS, right? We're reaching that summer period. If they can bring in somebody, or if they just get healthy. They're literally 4 points out of 4th place. And I think right now, a top 4 spot with the way that they started the season and home playoff game probably feels pretty good. And you got to think, Houston might still drop out of there. Colorado or Minnesota might drop out of there. Or with the way Portland's playing, Portland might drop out of there. But I think at this point, we're pretty sure Seattle, KC, and LA Galaxy are in that top West. And probably going to be in the playoffs. I don't think there's a doubt in my mind those 3 will be in there. But look, that's the thing, though, with the West. They could literally slip to last place in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And when we look at their schedule going forward, they do have Salt Lake, who they have yet to play this season. And that one's
twice.
That one's at Rio Tinto.
Yeah.
Then they go to Q2 Stadium and face Austin. And with the way Austin's playing right now, even at home, they've only had 2 home games, 0-0 results. LA Galaxy, I think, could nab something from there too, if they're healthy. And I think that is the main crux of them, and that I'm not ready to panic yet. I think with the way the West is right now, all of these teams are going to be in contention until maybe the last 2 weeks of the season, which is usually something the East has. But it looks like it's going to be the West this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, out of all the teams I'm looking at, the thing about LAFC, they have the talent to make one of these gigantic runs just because of how deep they are.
And they have the coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have the coach too.
Yeah.
So mine here is Chicago. They get a point. They get a point against the Philadelphia Union. Now, you can look at this 2 ways if you're Chicago, right? You can look at this and say, we got a point. That's pretty good. But you could also look at it and say it was a home game, and we led the game 3-2 at some point, right? So there is some issues where you probably look at it and say, well, we haven't played so well at Soldier Field this year, and we could have won this game and let them back in. The reason why I think a point is actually kind of big for them is because the last time Union played them in Chicago, the Union won. And I think that they need any sort of points they can get at this point, because I actually think it might be down between Toronto and Chicago for the wooden spoon right now. And if I'm Chicago, I don't want that. And I think that's going to lead into your next point with Toronto. But I look at Toronto, and somebody shared this online. Like, that lineup had, I think, 7 out of the 11 players were in their Champions League final lineup. Mm-hmm. And now they can barely even get points in MLS. So, is it Chris Armas? This team was actually second place for the Supporter Shield last year. So mm-hmm. I think management has something to do with it. I also think it's just an older squad at this point.
Yeah.
But when I look at Chicago, I think, okay, we need points. Their record is almost identical to Toronto right now, actually. They've won 1 game. Each one has won 1. They've each lost 7, and they've each tied 2. So this is actually only their 2nd draw of the season, which makes sense because they only have 5 points. They have a -10 goal differential, while Toronto has a -8. So Chicago's issue right now is scoring. They've only scored 7. They've given up 17. But remember, I just said they've only scored 7. They scored 3 this game. So before that, they'd only scored 4 goals in the previous 9 games. It's not good. The runner up of the Golden Boot is on their team, right? Mm-hmm. So where do you think Chicago goes from here? Is a point good enough against the Union at home? And this is a good team that usually doesn't give up that many goals in the Union. But of course, it was right after I said this should be a 3-0 victory for the Union. No problem done that the Union draw 3-3. But where do you think Chicago goes from here? And what, do you see them possibly outpacing Toronto?
That's a good one. That's a really tough one, that last question. I don't know. I would say that of the 2 teams, I think I would be a little bit more concerned right now in the way that Toronto's going, because they're leaking a lot more and just not scoring anything with it. And I think that they're an aging roster, or at least I think Chicago could add maybe 1 or 2 pieces and not be like a bottom dweller. But I do think, missing a guy like Frankowski right now, because he's over, he was over in Euros, so he was missing because he's playing with Poland. I think that this is a good point if you're looking at it from a perspective of what can we just salvage from this year. which you called it more so than I, because I was a little bit more high on them going into the season than you were. And you said that you had major concerns just by the production and the lack of production they had last year from basically any direction, whether it was the wings or the midfield, and they couldn't defend anybody. That still looks to be the case this year.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that this year.
Right. Except now they really just can't score. So, I think and then they go and score 3 against the Union, which makes no sense, and that's why MLS is fun. Yeah. But again, I think that you're right. I think that this is a team that is just trying to grab anything that's left that's oxygen. I think Wiki won't be around much longer. He, like Armis, I think, are very similar situations, because I think that they are a roster that just isn't going anywhere. Maybe people thought Toronto was going to be more of a contender, because I remember we were texting back and forth because we thought adding Soteldo was going to do a lot for this team. And man, it was like after that they just tanked, and that's just not a good look for the front office. It's not a good look for Armis. And it kind of makes you look at Armis because of his lack of success over the last couple of years. But I think Chicago is a better situation.
Before we transition to your Armis point, I just want to say Chicago, Wiki has to be gone at the end of this year. You haven't look. You can only rebrand so many times, right? And this will be their second rebrand in the last 2 years. Okay, that gives you a moment to reset, right? We're going to have a new logo, a new crest. We're back at Soldier Field, which they've already botched. Part of that was COVID because they couldn't have anybody there at first, but they're not getting a lot of people in there right now, because who's going to pay $30 to watch the Chicago Fire right now? So when you can get a new manager and you can have a new logo and you can produce these new kits that are probably going to be light blue, white, and red, it's going to look great. There has to also be some excitement player-wise there, and hopefully with the new manager, I don't know. I just don't think that obviously it's not all management issues or coaching issues. It's got to be player personnel as well. But look, this is a new ownership group that took over fairly recently. They're the ones that helped buy out the Bridgeview lease to move them from Bridgeview back to Soldier Field, something that was thought that couldn't ever be done because of how expensive that lease was for Bridgeview. And so they have money. They have a drive. They wanted to rebrand. They listen to the fans. They're bringing out something closer to the original branding. And that's where we always talked about preseason, about how Dallas handled things, or how we've talked about rebrands, I think, with Houston and stuff, right? But it's how many times you can only do that so many times. Now you actually have to put it on the field. And I think next year they have to put it on the field. They can't continue to put out a Chicago Fire team that's bottom of the East. And I mean, thankfully, on their end, Toronto hired Chris Armis, or else they'd probably be all the way at the bottom by themselves right now.
With Chris Armis in the helm.
Yeah. Oh, my. So let's go ahead and move to your last headline.
So, yeah, obviously we were kind of alluding to it before, but I wanted to talk about Toronto. Last 5 games they've lost with pretty much just leaking goals. Over the last 5 matches, they've allowed 1 against Orlando City, and then they allowed 2 against Crew, 3 against Orlando City, 3 against Nashville, and then 2 against a Cincinnati team that hasn't been able to score on pretty much anyone. It's concerning because, this is a roster, like you said, Jordan, that is aging. Michael Bradley, their captain's 33, going on 34 here soon. And there's not really anybody below that. Richie Larea is 26. Auro is, 25.
Akinola still young.
Omar Gonzalez is 32. Mavinga's 30. It's just an older roster. Josie Altidore was old until he's off playing by himself with the 10-year-olds. Yeah, I think he's actually out here playing in my yard.
Oh yeah, because they're in Orlando. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's actually he's actually over here kicking the ball in the net. because he can't get along with anybody. And the fact that he's been around for so long, and I get that there was rumblings of him moving on and getting a transfer this offseason, but the fact
he didn't like those rumors, though.
Yeah,
remember in the January camp, people were saying that Toronto might be trying to move him on, and he was like, he pretty much tried to call bullcrap on that, and it seemed like he was trying to say like, I don't want to go, or like that they're trying to force me out type of thing. And we're look, nobody has come out and talked about what the actual deal is with him, so I'm not sure what caused this, why they're shunning him, but I'm assuming there has to be a reason.
Yeah. But again, giving up 20 goals, the only other person that's given up 20 is San Jose, but at least San Jose can score goals. Toronto struggles more so in that department. They've only got 12 goals this season. So, you know, it is, you know, San Jose and Toronto kind of similar beast in and of their own. You got Chris Armas, who's going to be gone probably sooner rather than later. This was like a one-year deal kind of thing. And I think once Vanny left, I think it left a lot of questions as to like what systems they use. I know you and I were asking, like, are they just going to adopt Chris Armas Red Bull philosophy because they think that that's what might work with Chris Armas? And we talked about the fact that these are older players. At Red Bull, at least, Armas had younger guys that could have, you know, pressed teams like they normally do. But now Chris Armas is having to play a game where it's much more like possession based and not more, you know, I've seen them try to press, but I don't think they can press for 45 minutes. I know Michael Bradley can't press for 45 minutes anymore. So, or, you know, 90 minutes. It's concerning for them. It's concerning that they go out and spend that money for Soteldo, who could be a really good MLS player, but I think he's on a team that's kind of slowly dying, and having a Pozuelo who's not been healthy at all this year has hurt them tremendously as well.
I think some of the blame has to go to Canada, the country itself,
for
not letting these sport teams in. Most of these players are probably vaxxed, or, you know, look, I'm not sure what Canada – I know a lot of Canadians that are, you know, when I read online, upset with the procedures with the border right now, but I can't really speak to that. I'm not sure what their vaccine rollout's like or anything. But so if I'm not going to put the blame on Canada, then I'm going to put the blame on COVID, right? And this is the second straight year where they're going to be playing their games in another country without fans. I mean, all these other teams have their home fans except for Montreal, Vancouver, and Toronto. And while Montreal's been doing okay with it, Toronto just isn't. And I think that has to be a part of it. And I mean, I think with even Vanny there, they probably would have struggled. It wouldn't have been this bad. But I think they would have struggled. I think with the change of coaching, them still being far away from home. And I know we spoke with, I think, I'm not sure who exactly mentioned it out of the Canadian teams we covered, but they mentioned that they should be, it's a little different this year because they are allowing family members down there and them to, you know, be able to live in hotels and stuff. I think
Brady and then we're talking. I think Brady.
That's what I thought it was too. Yeah. But you're still away from home, and when you don't have the fans that we've seen some of the changes that fans have when we're watching the Euros, when we're watching the Premier League, when they started adding fans back in, it was like there was this push, you know, you can push the players, you can get behind them. And when they're playing in an empty Exploria Stadium, it's just depressing. It's hard to watch on TV now that every other team has fans in. To watch a game in some of these locations with the closed door, it's tough. So I haven't been able to get into Copa America that much because of they're still playing behind closed doors, and they do a whole group stage to remove 2 teams in Copa America right now. So, but I think that's still got to be part of it. Now, obviously, I think we all knew Chris Armas was not the right fit for this team. And for somebody that does not get paid to think that, that's pretty astounding that we all kind of picked up on that. They also were thinking about Ben Olsen, and it was like, who is in charge over there right now? Because none of those fit at all. You know, like when you're losing Greg Vanny and you're looking at, okay, let's get Ben Olsen, who's at DC United for 10 years and really achieved nothing. And then let's also look at Chris Armas, who took over for Jesse Marsh one season, won the Supporters' Shield off of that success, and then did nothing. There's not any other candidates that would have qualified for that job. This is an issue we're going to find out about, I think, as I actually want to transition to San Jose in a bit too here after just quickly touch on what their issue is. But real quick, I just want to go over Toronto's schedule then. So they have 1 win, just like the Fire. 2 draws, just like the Fire. They face DC United next, who's been a surprise. That's at Audi Field. Then they face New England at Gillette Stadium, where New England has won 5 matches out of 5. Then they face Orlando. That might be an Exploria. It says to be determined. But I think they might have to move. There might be Gold Cup games there, maybe.
Toronto's doing that thing where they play here on a limited basis, and then if they've determined, because there was rumors that they were actually going to move up north again.
So maybe we'll see where that game's going to be at. But if it's at Orlando, then it's basically an Orlando home game at that rate. No fans, but you're in the stadium that you play in all the time. Then they face Red Bull, and then July 24th they have Chicago Fire. When we look at Chicago's upcoming ones, they have Atlanta, which is going to transition to my next thing here in a bit. And then they have Orlando, Nashville, DC, and Toronto. And 4 of those 5 are at Soldier Field. So they have a shot to maybe pick up some points, Chicago, to get out of the cellar while Toronto is struggling. I feel for Toronto and their players, though, with playing in a foreign country all the time for the last 2 seasons. It's got to be rough. Atlanta struggles. I just want to kind of touch on this. We don't have to spend too much time on this because I do want to also just touch on San Jose's general manager thing. But because I know we kind of got to wrap it up a bit as a shorter episode because of scheduling stuff. But we were kind of giving the benefit of the doubt to Atlanta early in the season. We thought Heinze would be able to really get this team looking sharp, even without Joseph Martinez being himself. He's also not there. He's at Copa right now. But when we're looking at this, look, they drew with the Union. The Union came back from the death. Really, they should have closed down Glesnes. They know he could shoot from there. They've seen it against the LAFC. New York City FC beat them. They draw with Red Bulls. So they've had some okay results. The last win, though, was May 15th against Montreal. You've had a 1-1 result against Seattle at Lumen Field. You had a 2-2 result against Nashville, where Nashville came from 2-0 down. You have Philadelphia coming back from 2-0 down. You have New York City FC winning, and then you have Red Bull drawing. And guess what? Out of those results I just listed, 3 of those were at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The draw with Nashville, the draw with Red Bull, and the draw with Union. So they're just not getting it done at home. Coming up, they have Chicago Fire at Soldier Field. You like to think that they could get something from there. They have Nashville, who is in Nashville, and that's kind of just that's a tough. Nashville's dangerous, all right. Yeah. And then you have New England Revolution. Then you have Cincinnati, which you'd like to think that they could get some points from there, but Cincinnati is starting to improve. Then you have Columbus and Orlando. It's just not stopping right now for Atlanta, and they haven't been able to really turn it around good enough. They're currently sitting in 10th place. Now, again, they're at 12 points. They're only 3 points back of 5th place. So 1 win and those other teams losing, and they're shooting up the standings, and it looks pretty good. But I just don't have the faith in them. All those home draws right now.
Yeah, Joseph scoring 2. He hasn't really played at all in Copa, and he wasn't in form when he left. So bringing him back and trying to get him in form again, and then having to manage his time because they don't want to play him a ton because he's been over and he's not been in the system in MLS over here. Marcelino Moreno scores 3 goals, but after that, nobody else has scored more than Joseph at 2. And that's just not going to get it done. And we talked about that too. If Joseph isn't going to score 20 goals, 25 goals, this team's not one of the top teams in the East anymore.
I'm starting to think it was mostly Tata Martino at this rate that helped them out. I mean, they haven't really hit on a DP in a while either.
Right.
I mean, Sosa's been good, but I mean, like, you know, they haven't really hit on one since Almiron at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just talk San Jose real quick. This was announced just a few hours ago. Earthquakes are parting ways with their general manager, Jesse Fiorinelli. And something Paul Tenorio points out here is that this is his tweet here. It will be interesting to see if San Jose goes back to a consulting firm, the same or different than they used before, for their next GM hire. Those hires have not been great in MLS. He ran the numbers earlier this month, and they were at a 1.05 points per game against 264 games at 5 clubs. Then he puts, ultimately, any hire falls on ownership, but the league has recommended firms, and the hires haven't worked out yet. It will be interesting on whether teams look more at domestic candidates than the consulting firms. What's kind of your take on that? Why would you need a consulting firm to hire a GM? Couldn't you just have somebody? It obviously hasn't worked out. It's 5 clubs, 264 games, and only 1.05 points per game. Not a good look for MLS. And now I feel like if I'm the Quakes, I'm looking elsewhere. I'm not using that.
Yeah, especially here in the U.S. What do they know about soccer?
That's the thing. I don't know where they're based from.
But again, like a consulting firm is ultimately going to be somebody that's here domestically because they're going to want to consult with advice that is beneficial to teams here in the United States in domestic game. Like it's not going to be you're not going to get a consulting firm from Europe and say, hey, what's going on over the United States? Because I don't know how to consult anybody on who to hire because I don't know the financials. I don't know the dynamics of the league. I don't know the market of the league, the marketability. So I think that and this is all really confusing to me because you've never seen like mid-season them go after a GM and then the rest of the front office go with them. Like it should clean house then. I mean, I think Matias Almeida is
not a good look for Almeida, right? He's going to be gone at the end of the season because that GM's going to want to bring in their own guy.
Right. Own guy, anybody below him, they're pretty much going to want to bring in a different person. The only time it's different is if like this Wilf family coming in from Minnesota. The difference between that is this team has been up for sale, and it's just a transaction between one ownership group and another ownership group. That's a totally different thing. But firing a GM based off of these consulting firms have come in and said, hey, this will be a good hire, and then it's not. You think you'd learned your lesson. It'd be like touching a stove and going, yeah, that's hot, but let me touch it again just to make sure if it's still hot. It doesn't make sense to me. And this team, I mean, man, they were fun to watch for those first 5 or 6 games because we thought just maybe they had gotten a decent signing and a good step in the right direction. But it just seems like they're just crumbling at the core again.
I forget where I landed on them. I'll have to listen back, but I'm pretty sure I thought they were not making the playoffs this year.
No, I don't think either knew that. But
so to me, I feel like this is pretty dead on. I don't think, to be honest, maybe Almeida will go somewhere else and be a better coach, but I don't think he's been a great coach for San Jose. I don't think he's been a great coach at any of his clubs from when we look at it. Even the players he brought in from those clubs to San Jose haven't really worked out. So, again, I mean, we'll see where they go from it. I think soccer's weird because really we're only the ones that have GMs over here. Like in other countries, they have directors of football or the coach makes the decisions. And before they added directors of football, they literally just had the coaches make all the decisions. And they've started going to more of that GM route, but they don't call it that. Yeah. But it's kind of weird, like, we don't really know of any up-and-coming GMs that were able to say, oh, get this guy. Like when the Astros were good for baseball, like the Orioles went and poached one of their guys. Other people have poached the Rays guys. Yeah. But because this is still a young league and the fact is that general managers are not a worldwide thing, it seems hard to find them. Like the Union went out and got one from, Ernst Tanner from Germany as a sporting director. So maybe that's what they need, is somebody that's going to come in with a vision of what type of play style works best. And I know people said that the Quakes have wasted Wondolowski's career. Probably, right? When you look at playoffs and stuff like that. But this might be the best time for them to get rid of a GM going into this, because now you won't have Wondolowski. so that GM's not going to be tempted to be like, oh, we can just rely on him scoring goals. They're going to have to figure out, this is the style I want to play, and they'll have to try to get those players. But the ownership needs to figure out who fits that thing. The consulting firm can only do so much. They can give you a list of candidates. They can tell you their background. But ultimately, as Tenorio points out, it is ownership's decision. And it seems like they've, even before they use consulting firms for the Quakes, have not been good at it either way that they slice it. So let's just quickly go over what the schedule looks like for TV this week. Here we go. So it is Thursday, July 1st. We have Austin versus Portland at Q2 Stadium. We mentioned this briefly, but Austin, 2 draws at home, both 0-0 results. So we're still waiting for the first club goal at Q2 Stadium. It would have been great if it was Columbus just because of the history there, but it wasn't. Columbus on Saturday versus New England. So that Austin-Portland game is on FS1 on Thursday. Saturday, we have Columbus versus New England at 5 o'clock. That's on ESPN. That's lower.com field or New Crew Stadium. 5:30, we have DC United versus Toronto. That's on ESPN+. Montreal versus Miami at 7:30. That's on ESPN+. Orlando versus New York Red Bulls at 7:30 on ESPN+. Chicago versus Atlanta, 8 o'clock on ESPN+. All the rest of them I'm just going to say are on ESPN+. Minnesota at 8 o'clock versus San Jose. Nashville versus Philly at 8 o'clock in Nashville. That should be fun. Dynamo versus Cincinnati at 8:30. And 10 o'clock is Salt Lake versus LAFC. Then on Sunday, July 4th, we have 3 games, none of them on major networks. That's kind of a slap in the face. 8:30, we have Dallas versus Vancouver on ESPN+, Colorado versus Seattle at 9 o'clock, and 10:30 is LA Galaxy versus Sporting Kansas City. So all of them, you can't even watch every game. You're going to have to watch 30 minutes of Dallas and then flip over to Colorado, Seattle. And then right before that one's over, you're going to have to flip over to LA Galaxy, Kansas City.
But remember, you need to watch the hot dog eating contest and like them flipping boats or something crazy on ESPN and Fox and all of the
crazy, that's July 4th, right?
July 4th stuff. So.
Crazy. Well, if you want to reach out to us and let us know your thoughts, you can contact us on Twitter at Stateside Show, Facebook.com/Stateside Show, Instagram at Stateside Show, email us statesideshow@gmail.com. And we will catch you all next time. Thanks for listening or watching.